Imagine a cold river at sunrise, mist curling above the water like a warning from heaven. A wounded Marine floats helplessly, his uniform torn, his dog tags barely clinging to his chest. On the riverbank, a lonely widow steps out of her cabin, unaware that fate is about to place a stranger at her feet. And standing beside her is a German shepherd with sharp amber eyes, ears pointed high, sensing something no human can. This dog will be the first to see him, the first to touch him, and the first to know that this broken man is meant to change everything. As you watch this story, ask yourself, is this just luck? Or is this a miracle written long before any of them were born? Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, your city, your state, your country. I love reading your comments, and if you enjoy stories filled with faith, destiny, and life's unexpected blessings, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for being here. Now, let's begin. The late winter dawn settled slowly over Redwood Valley, a quiet farming region in the American West, where the land stretched wide and lonely beneath a heavy gray sky. Bitter winds rolled through the fields, bending the dry grass and rattling the loose boards of old barns. A recent storm had swollen the river that cut through the valley, turning its waters into a churning, icy torrent capable of pulling down anything that dared fall into it. The cold was the kind that stung the skin and tightened the lungs, a cold that made every breath feel like a blade of frost. Along the river, the air carried a faint scent of pine and wet soil. The morning light struggled to break through the cloud cover, casting the landscape in muted bluish tones. Nothing about this place seemed welcoming at that hour, except perhaps to the wildlife that had grown used to such harshness. The valley had always been beautiful, but it was a beauty wrapped in difficulty, a place where the strong survived and the weary learned to endure. Miles upstream, during a violent clash near the border, a U.S. Marine had been thrown by the shockwave of an explosion. The blast had erupted with deafening force, tearing through smoke, fire, and flying debris. The Marine, a man somewhere in his early 30s with a hard, angular face shaped by years of discipline, had little time to react before the explosion hurled him down the riverbank and into the freezing water below. He wore a torn and mud-soaked uniform, the camouflage pattern barely visible after the brutal journey downstream. His dark hair was cropped short in a tight military style, and faint stubble shadowed his strong jawline. His body was muscular, built from years of physical training, yet now limp from injury and exhaustion. Old scars crossed his arms and ribs, silent reminders of battles survived, while fresh wounds hinted at the one he had just escaped. As he floated unconscious in the rushing current, small fragments of battlefield memories drifted somewhere deep inside him. Shouts, gunfire, a blinding flash of light, but none were clear enough to hold on to. His mind had been shaken loose, leaving him suspended in darkness while the merciless river carried him farther and farther from the fight. Eventually, the current tossed him onto a muddy bend where the tall reeds swayed in the wind. There he lay motionless, half submerged, his breathing shallow and uneven. Not far from that riverbank, Emily Parker, a young widow in her late 20s, walked along a dirt path with a basket of warm food balanced against her hip. Emily was of average height, with a slender frame shaped by years of working alone on her small homestead. Her long, chestnut-brown hair was loosely braided, with a few strands escaping to brush her lightly freckled cheeks. Her blue-gray eyes held a quiet sadness, the kind that lingered long after the tears had dried. 2 years earlier, Emily had lost her husband in a construction accident, a tragedy that had forced her to shoulder responsibilities she never expected to face alone. Yet she carried herself with gentle determination. She was kind to everyone in Redwood Valley, soft-spoken yet resilient, the sort of woman who offered help even when life had not been kind to her. Walking at her side was her loyal German shepherd, Hunter, a 3-year-old male with a strong, athletic build and a thick black and tan coat. Hunter had sharp amber eyes and an alert posture that rarely relaxed. He had been a gift from Emily's late husband when he was still a puppy. As he grew older, he became not only her protector but her emotional anchor, a dog who sensed her loneliness, watched over her home, and followed her everywhere she went. As the cold wind swept across the valley, Hunter suddenly stopped. His ears twitched upright, his nose lifted to the air. Emily paused and looked down at him. "What is it, boy?" she asked, catching her breath as the wind tugged at her coat. Hunter gave a low, urgent sound, a soft rumble that meant something wasn't right. Then, without hesitation, he launched forward, sprinting through the tall grass toward the river. "Hunter, wait!" Emily cried out, startled. She set the basket down and ran after him, her boots slipping in the damp soil as she hurried down the sloping path. Hunter was faster, weaving through bushes, leaping over fallen branches, his instincts guiding him with fierce determination. When Emily finally reached the riverbank, she saw Hunter standing rigid beside a motionless body. For a moment she froze, her breath catching in her throat. The man lying there barely looked alive. His uniform was torn, his boots soaked, and his face pale from cold and blood loss. Emily gasped, kneeling beside him as Hunter hovered protectively over both of them, tail stiff, ears forward, ready to bark at anyone or anything that came too close. Emily touched the man's shoulder gently. His skin felt like ice. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Sir, can you hear me?" No response, but he was breathing, shallow, weak, but still breathing. Emily looked around the deserted riverbank, fear and urgency rising in her chest. The nearest medical station was too far, and he wouldn't survive the journey in this condition. The Parker homestead, however, was much closer. She swallowed hard, then pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and called the only people she could rely on, her friends at the nearby ranch. "Please," she said breathlessly, "I found a man by the river. I need help getting him to my house. He's hurt badly." Hunter stood guard beside the Marine, occasionally nudging the man's arm with his nose as if urging him to hold on. The cold wind whipped across all three of them, but Emily didn't move. Something in her heart told her that this man, this stranger, needed her in ways he couldn't yet say. And so, on that icy winter morning in Redwood Valley, fate quietly began weaving together 3 lives that had never meant to cross. The faint glow of morning filtered through the thin curtains of Emily's guest room, casting soft golden stripes across the wooden floor. The small cabin, built from warm-toned pine, creaked gently as the winter wind brushed against its walls. Inside, the air was calm, carrying the scent of herbal salve and freshly boiled water. The Marine lay on a modest bed covered with a patchwork quilt, his breathing slow but steady after a night of feverish rest. His body ached as though it had been torn apart and stitched back together. But worse than the pain was the emptiness inside his mind, a blank, echoing silence where his memories should have been. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Hunter sitting near the foot of the bed. The German shepherd's amber eyes were fixed on him with an alert, protective intensity. Hunter's ears twitched at the slightest movement, and his sturdy frame remained poised, as if guarding not just the room but the fragile state of the man awakening within it. The Marine blinked slowly, trying to orient himself, realizing with a sinking dread that he didn't recognize the room, the dog, or even himself. Emily entered quietly, carrying a bowl of warm broth. She wore a soft gray sweater, and her hair hung loosely today, framing her gentle but worried expression. "Good morning," she said softly, approaching with cautious hope. "You're safe now." The Marine tried to speak, but his voice cracked, the words refusing to form. Emily set the bowl down and moved closer. "Do you remember anything? Your name? Where you were?" Her voice was warm but steady, the voice of someone who had learned to speak kindly, even when burdened with fear. He searched his mind, but nothing answered. No name, no place, only shadows. I don't know," he whispered, his brow tightening with confusion. "I don't know who I am." Emily's heart tightened. She sat beside the bed but kept a respectful distance. "You were hurt badly when Hunter found you," she explained. "We brought you here so you wouldn't freeze out there." Hunter's tail thumped once, as if confirming his role proudly. A knock sounded at the door, firm but polite. Emily stood and opened it to reveal Dr. Samuel Bennett, the town physician. Dr. Bennett was a man in his early 60s, tall and lean with a weathered face lined by decades of service. His hair, once coal-black, had turned silver, swept neatly back. A pair of rectangular glasses rested on his narrow nose, giving him a studious, no-nonsense appearance. Despite his stern look, Dr. Bennett carried himself with the calm assurance of someone who had seen enough crises to know how to handle them. He had a habit of speaking directly, a trait shaped by years of treating ranch injuries, farm accidents, and the occasional bar fight. "Morning, Emily," he greeted with a nod before stepping inside. "Let's see how our mystery soldier is doing." The Marine watched as the doctor examined him with professional precision, checking his pupils, his pulse, the swelling at his temple. Dr. Bennett listened to his breathing before stepping back with a thoughtful sigh. "Severe concussion," he announced. "Likely from the blast you described." Then he addressed the Marine directly. "Son, your brain took quite a hit. Temporary amnesia isn't uncommon in cases like this. Your memories may return, or they may take time. Stress can bring them back suddenly, but for now, you need rest." The Marine stared at him, searching for something to anchor himself to. "But who am I?" he asked again, almost pleading. Dr. Bennett reached into his coat and pulled out a small, scorched fragment of a military name tape. "This was on what was left of your uniform," he said, placing it on the nightstand. Most of the text had been burned away, leaving only faint edges of letters. "From what I can gather, you're active duty Marine Corps. And considering the state you were in, you likely escaped something intense." Emily looked at the fragment quietly before meeting the Marine's eyes. "You can stay here until you're strong enough to remember," she offered. "You shouldn't be alone in this condition." The Marine opened his mouth to protest, but a wave of dizziness overtook him. Emily steadied him with a gentle hand on his shoulder. Hunter moved closer too, resting his chin near the man's arm as if providing silent reassurance. Dr. Bennett packed his tools and gave Emily instructions before leaving. "Keep him warm, hydrated, and calm," he said. "Call me if there's any change." When the door closed, the cabin fell quiet again. The Marine looked around the room, at the wooden beams, the small bookshelf filled with old family keepsakes, the faint smell of lavender. Everything felt unfamiliar, yet strangely safe. "Thank you," he murmured. Emily's smile was soft, touched with the kindness she shared so easily. "You're welcome. We'll figure this out together." Hunter shifted closer, his loyal presence a reminder that even a man without a name was not entirely alone. The next morning began with a pale winter sun rising over Redwood Valley, casting long shadows across Emily's property. The air remained sharp and cold, but inside the cabin, the warmth from the small wood-burning stove spread gently through each room. The Marine, still nameless, still fighting against the fog in his mind, woke before dawn, driven by an instinct he didn't understand. His body responded to an unseen rhythm, one shaped by years of discipline, training, and a soldier's ingrained habits. Even without memories, his muscles remembered. He rose quietly, folding the blanket at the foot of the bed with a precision that surprised even him. Hunter lifted his head from where he had been sleeping near the door, the German shepherd's ears perking up instantly. The dog's thick black and tan coat shimmered faintly in the early light as he stretched, then padded alongside the Marine as if reporting for duty. The Marine stepped outside, feeling the cold bite into his skin. He scanned the yard, taking in the worn fence, the sagging section of the roof, and the woodpile that had almost been depleted. Without thinking, he rolled up his sleeves and set to work. He chopped firewood with controlled power, the axe rising and falling in smooth arcs. Hunter stayed close, occasionally nudging dropped pieces into small piles or circling the area as if guarding the perimeter. When Emily emerged from the cabin holding 2 steaming mugs of tea, she stopped at the sight before her. The Marine stood with his breath misting the air, his posture straight, every movement purposeful. Even without a name, he looked like someone who had spent his life protecting others. She approached quietly. "You don't have to do all that," she said softly. He turned to her, offering a faint smile that was both shy and warm. "I don't know what else to do," he admitted. "It just feels right." Emily handed him the tea. "Then thank you." Throughout the day, the Marine continued helping her, tightening the loose hinges on the barn door, rearranging heavy boxes Emily had long struggled with, and even climbing onto the roof to repair a section damaged in the last storm. Hunter remained his constant companion, sometimes barking a warning when the ladder shifted, sometimes pulling small branches out of the Marine's way. The dog's intelligence showed in every gesture, every attentive glance. In the late afternoon, after hours of work, the Marine joined Hunter outside near the open field. He threw a stick, and Hunter raced after it with joyful abandon. For the first time since waking, the Marine laughed, a genuine, unrestrained sound. It was enough to make Emily glance out the window and smile quietly to herself as she stirred the pot of stew on the stove. As the sun dipped behind the hills, the 3 gathered around the small wooden table for dinner. Emily's cooking filled the house with comforting aromas: herbs, roasted vegetables, and the warm smell of bread. She watched the Marine eat slowly, almost as if the simple act of sharing a meal felt unfamiliar yet precious. "You worked hard today," she said gently. He looked up, thoughtful. "I don't know who I was, but helping you makes me feel like I have a place here, like it's something I was meant to do." Emily felt her heart soften. She didn't say anything more, but the warmth in her eyes spoke for her. Later that night, the weather changed abruptly. Thunder growled overhead as rain began to fall in sharp, icy sheets. Emily grabbed her coat and headed toward the storage shed to check a leak she'd worried about. The Marine and Hunter stayed inside, unaware she had stepped out. A sudden crash echoed from the direction of the shed. Hunter's ears shot up immediately. He let out a deep, urgent bark, then another. The Marine stood, instincts flaring. "What is it, boy?" he asked, but Hunter was already heading toward the door. The Marine followed him into the storm. Rain drenched them instantly, but Hunter pressed forward, barking louder and more insistently. They reached the shed where Emily lay on the ground. Her ankle twisted painfully beneath her. She winced when she saw them. "Emily!" the Marine shouted, dropping to his knees beside her. "Are you hurt?" "It's just my ankle." "I slipped," she said, trying to hide the pain. Hunter nudged her gently, whining. The Marine lifted her carefully, carrying her inside as Hunter trotted beside them. Emily's arms wrapped around his shoulders, her face close enough for him to feel her trembling breaths. Inside, he set her gently on the couch and examined her ankle with surprising tenderness. Emily watched him, this man with no name, no memory, yet with a heart that seemed to know exactly how to care for others. In that moment, something shifted quietly in her. She realized she feared losing him, even before she truly knew him. The feeling startled her, but it was undeniable. The Marine sensed something too, a strange warmth, a tether forming between them and anchored by the watchful presence of Hunter. For the first time, this unfamiliar cabin no longer felt temporary to him. It felt like the beginning of something he didn't yet understand, but deeply needed. The morning after the storm carried a deceptive calm, as though Redwood Valley wanted to offer a sliver of peace before changing everything. The sky had cleared just enough to allow thin rays of sunlight to fall upon Emily's property, glistening against the puddles that still dotted the ground. The air smelled of wet earth and pine, sharp and clean. The Marine, still struggling with the emptiness where his past should be, stepped outside with Hunter at his side, feeling the gentle breeze rustle against his skin. Though his mind remained a puzzle with missing pieces, the place had begun to feel strangely familiar, like a sanctuary he had once known. Emily was hanging laundry to dry, her hair tied up loosely, her movements steady despite the slight limp from her sprained ankle. She tried to hide the discomfort, but the Marine noticed everything, how she shifted her weight, how she winced when she reached too high. He walked toward her, feeling that constant pull of protectiveness within him. "Let me help with that," he offered quietly. She smiled gratefully. "I'm all right. The ankle's healing. Thanks to you and Hunter." Hunter wagged his tail proudly, lifting his head high as if accepting an award. The moment was peaceful, almost ordinary. And then the air split open with a violent blasting rumble. A large diesel truck parked near the neighboring ranch roared to life, its engine coughing out a harsh metallic growl. The sound thundered across the open field, deep, echoing, explosive in its intensity. The Marine froze. His eyes widened. The world around him warped in an instant. The thundering engine dissolved into the memory of a battlefield explosion. Sand, smoke, bodies thrown into the air. His breathing hitched as flashes of light burst behind his eyes. The smell of gasoline became burning metal. The distant barking of a dog became desperate shouts from fellow soldiers. His knees buckled as he clutched his head, trying to escape the sudden onslaught of memories. Emily dropped the shirt in her hands and rushed toward him. "Hey, look at me. Are you all right?" But he didn't hear her. He was somewhere else. In the middle of the fight, he had fled in terror without even knowing. Hunter barked sharply, circling him, sensing the rising panic. The dog nudged the Marine's arm, but the man barely registered it. Images collided violently in his mind. A squad of Marines advancing through smoke. A commanding officer shouting orders. The sharp sting of sand hitting his face. The sudden, catastrophic explosion that threw him into the river. A name tag partially burned, A radio crackling with the code phrase requiring immediate return to base, and then a voice, deep, commanding, familiar. "Carter, move!" His breath caught. Carter. The name echoed again. Michael Carter. Suddenly his knees gave out, and he sank into the wet dirt, trembling. Emily reached him first, gently, holding his shoulders. Hunter pressed close, whining softly. I remember," he whispered. Emily's heart tightened. "What do you remember?" He looked at her with eyes that no longer held confusion, but clarity, fear, and sorrow. "My name, Michael Carter." He swallowed hard. "I'm a Marine. I was on a mission. My squad. The explosion. I should be reporting back. They might think I'm dead." Emily stepped back slightly, the truth landing heavier than the storm that had passed the night before. The safety she had come to associate with him now felt fragile, temporary. Michael stood shakily, running a hand over his face. His posture had shifted. He looked like a soldier again, not a lost man. His jaw tightened with responsibility, the duty ingrained in every fiber of his being resurfacing all at once. "I have to go back," he said quietly, voice tight with conflict. "If my team survived, they need to know what happened. And if they didn't..." He paused, pained. "I owe them the truth." Emily felt a sting inside her chest. She tried to hide it, but the sadness in her eyes was unmistakable. "I understand," she whispered. "It's your duty." Michael looked at her then, really looked. The woman who had saved his life, fed him, cared for him, and offered him a home without knowing his name. He felt something powerful pull at him, something deeper than memory. "I don't want to hurt you," he said softly. Emily forced a small smile. "You didn't. You won't." Hunter stepped between them, glancing from Michael to Emily, sensing the quiet pain passing between them. The dog's tail lowered, his ears drooping, as if already mourning the separation he felt coming. Michael knelt and placed his hand gently on Hunter's head. "You saved me too, buddy," he murmured. "I won't forget that." When he stood again, he looked at Emily, his voice barely above a breath. "I will come back, if you'll let me." Her answer was soft, but steady. "I'll be here." The wind blew gently around them, but the moment felt heavy, filled with unspoken promises and the weight of choices neither of them had expected to face. The chill of early evening settled softly over Redwood Valley, turning the horizon into a blend of orange and fading violet. The storm clouds from previous days had fully cleared, leaving the air crisp and the earth damp beneath the shadows of tall pines. Inside Emily's cabin, the warmth from the stove flickered across the walls, but a quiet heaviness hung in the room, something neither Michael nor Emily could ignore. Michael stood near the window, staring at the distant hills as if trying to memorize every curve and shape. Hunter lay beside him, ears lowered, sensing the tension that flowed between the two humans he had grown so attached to. The cabin, once a place of refuge and stillness, now felt like the center of an imminent farewell. Emily stepped into the room with a folded blanket in her arms. She moved carefully on her healing ankle, but her face betrayed no discomfort, only a soft, controlled sadness. Her long chestnut hair was loosely tied, and the pale glow of dusk painted her features with a gentle melancholy. She set the blanket on the table, then clasped her hands together as though bracing herself for something she wished she could stop. "Your strength has come back quickly," she said quietly, attempting a smile. "Dr. Bennett will be glad to know you're well enough to travel." Michael turned toward her, the weight of duty pulling sharply at his expression His jaw was tight, and his eyes, once filled with confusion, now held clarity, determination, and an undercurrent of regret. "I have to go back," he said, voice low. "My unit. They need to know what happened. They need to know I'm still alive." Emily nodded, though the motion trembled slightly. "I know. I understand." She looked away briefly, blinking back the lingering ache she could no longer hide. "It just feels too soon." Hunter rose and stepped between them, placing himself like a silent barrier, or perhaps a plea. His black and tan coat bristled in the dim light, and his amber eyes moved from Emily to Michael, as if urging both to stay together. Michael knelt, placing a steady hand on Hunter's neck. "You've looked after her better than anyone," he murmured, his voice soft but sincere. "Take care of her while I'm gone." Hunter responded with a low whine, nudging Michael's hand as though refusing to accept the separation. Michael stood again and looked at Emily. She met his gaze with eyes full of quiet strength, eyes that had seen too much loss already, yet still carried warmth and hope. He took a slow step toward her. "You saved my life," he said. "You gave me a place to heal. You gave me something I didn't know I'd been missing." Emily exhaled shakily. "You gave something back too," she whispered. "This house was so silent before you came. You changed that." A silence stretched between them, not empty, but filled with every unspoken feeling that had grown in the past days. Michael reached out gently, taking her hand in his. Her fingers tightened around his instinctively. "If you allow it," he said, voice almost a whisper, "I will come back. Not because of obligation, not because of what you did for me, but because this." His eyes drifted around the room. The cabin, the warmth, Hunter watching them intently. "This feels like home, more than anywhere I remember." Emily's breath caught. A tear slipped down her cheek before she had the chance to stop it. Michael brushed it away with the gentleness of someone afraid he might break something precious. "I'll be waiting," she said softly. "Just promise me you'll return safely." "I promise." Hunter barked once, sharp, earnest as if sealing their vow. As night approached, Michael packed the few belongings Emily had helped gather for him: clean clothes, water, a small supply of food. Before stepping outside, he paused at the doorway, looking back one last time. Emily stood with Hunter at her side, both framed by the warm glow of the cabin's lantern light. The sight etched itself deeply into his memory, something to carry with him wherever he went. "I'll find my way back," he said. Emily nodded, her voice too tight to speak. Hunter stepped forward, tail low, giving a soft, mournful sound. Michael reached down, giving the dog one final scratch behind the ears. "Good boy." Then he turned and began walking down the dirt path leading away from the cabin. The valley stretched ahead, quiet, vast, and bathed in the blue of approaching night. Each step felt heavier than the last, but his resolve remained steady. He had his memories back now, but he was leaving behind something far more delicate and far more meaningful. The promise he carried was not merely a vow of return. It was the beginning of a future he hadn't known he wanted. Behind him, Emily and Hunter stood watching until his silhouette faded into the darkness. Sometimes in life, the greatest miracles don't arrive in flashes of light or dramatic signs from the heavens. Sometimes they appear quietly, through the kindness of a stranger, the loyalty of a dog, or the courage of a wounded soul trying to find his way home. Michael drifted into Emily's world by accident. But perhaps it wasn't an accident at all. Perhaps it was a gentle reminder that God's plans are often hidden in the moments we don't understand. A reminder that even in the middle of pain, loss, and confusion, He can guide two broken hearts to meet at exactly the right time. And maybe this story touches something inside you too, because all of us, in our own ways, are searching for healing, for hope, and for a place to belong. And sometimes, God sends help in forms we least expect. If you believe that miracles still happen, big or small, if you believe that love, compassion, and faith can change lives, then I invite you to keep this message alive. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that God is still working in their life. Leave a comment telling us if you've ever experienced a quiet miracle of your own. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories of hope, love, and the unexpected ways God moves among us. May the Lord bless you, protect you, and guide your steps. And may His light shine upon everyone watching this video today. God bless you all.